Right, so welcome everybody, and thanks for inviting me to be part of the Texas Rugby Referees and Rugby Union Return to Refereeing presentation. I'm very excited to be here, and I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Part one is tonight, and we are going to cover, it's called BASE. We're going to talk about presentation, how you present yourself, perceptions, and core skills. And then every 2 weeks at the same time, we will go to the next section, structure, which will be foundation, scrum, line out, maul, space, foul play. 2 weeks later will be flow, which is breakdown, positioning, and advantage. And the last one is delivery, game understanding, standards, and big calls. So the goal here is to provide guidance, but to also equally allow everyone to ask questions and engage. So please feel free to share your experiences. And I know that when I started refereeing, I never felt comfortable to engage early on. You know, I mean, we used to have meetings every 2 weeks and a season that was more than half a year. And I'd go sit in these meetings and I never would want to ask anything because you sort of feel a little bit intimidated or embarrassed. You don't want to ask a question that people might think it's silly. And I think if I'd been the person I am now, I would ask all the silly questions. And, you know, it probably could have speeded up my progress a lot quicker than back then, taking me 10 years to sort of get to Division 1 where I was. So I think you all muted. So please feel free to unmute yourself, to ask, to interrupt. You know, every day, and I can say that even having been involved in rugby refereeing for 35 years now, every day I still learn something in rugby. So this is an opportunity for everyone to learn all the time. And like, you may learn something from me, and I will definitely learn something from you. So please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions as we go through. I sent out some questions to Kat and Timmy to share with you. We just want to talk about who becomes a referee. So, you know, at some point in your career, we all have those experiences where we wonder why we're actually doing this. Why did we become a referee? We have such a bad time out there, and, you know, we might feel really upset about our performance or how we carried ourselves. You know, we go home. I've talked about this before, you know, where you go home and you sleep under the bed just in case somebody's looking for you, you know, sort of cry yourself to sleep. But that happens to everybody. But what I just want to ask you out there, when you became a referee, why did you become a referee? And who did you think you were going to become when you became a referee? Does anybody want to share their story with us?
Hi, everyone. This is Jared here.
Oh, Jared. And thanks, Jared. And just please always just introduce yourself so we know who's talking. Go for it, Jared.
Yeah. So I started refereeing because purely to get political favor with the Referee Society while we were playing in college, we decided to offer a referee course, host the facility essentially for free. And as a thank you, they gave us a couple of free seats in the course. And I decided that I'd sit in on it in order to become a better player. And the next weekend, I didn't have a match. There was a sevens tournament nearby. So I decided that I would go there and pick up a couple of extra bucks in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And after being tossed into the fire, pulled back out, dusted off, tossed back in again. It was really a great first go, actually, in terms of how it could have been structured. I realized that I kind of enjoyed it and started to do it more seriously. And I do think it made me a much better player, which was the hope. But I realized I had much more potential as a referee, and the level of enjoyment I got out of it made me choose this direction.
And the good days make up for any bad days you might not have, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely some good stories on the bad day side, but there are plenty of good stories as well.
Thanks, Jared. Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Joe Meyer. So I guess, well, one of the reasons I became a referee is I had stopped playing for a couple of years. I had
Yeah.
played for 8 to 10 years and gotten a few too many injuries and decided to stop playing. And after a few years, I was considering coming back playing, but Dave Dodge, who's on this call, sent out an email blast about becoming a ref. And for whatever reason, I decided, maybe I'll try this route to get back into the game. I was starting to get really kind of antsy on Saturdays to figure out what I was going to do again. So really, that's really why I became a referee, just to get back into the game and get back into the rugby community since I've been out for a couple of years. But I guess asking about the good days and the bad days, for me, it's just like playing. You have good days and bad days, and it feels about the same when you're reffing. So I guess it's a little more. You have a little more on your plate because you could potentially decide a game, but I don't know. I've enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, it's funny, and even as a manager, I found that people say to me like, "Why do you do this? Do you find there's anybody out there that actually likes you? And I think in the American landscape too, there's not a lot of love for referees generally in American sports. So in rugby, it's interesting though because even though there's obviously that. Early on when you start refereeing, there's that division between you and the players and the coaches, but I think as you improve and as you mature into a referee, that those relationships, you start building those relationships more and more and more, but we'll talk a little bit more about those things. Is there anyone else who wants to share their story of how they became a ref, or why did they become a ref?
Yeah, my name's Christopher Pugh. I became a referee in fall of 2017. I actually dual tracked that year, but I knew with the amount of injuries I was having, a shoulder injury, a back injury, and numerous concussions, I needed to stop, but I wanted to stay a part of rugby.
Yeah.
So I used refereeing as my transition into staying with the game, but still being a part, but not putting my body through the ringer like I used to.
So how's your shoulder now when you referee? Do you award fewer penalties?
Some matches it's a little sore. Other matches it's all right.
Yeah. Well, it's great that you recovered, and so you 3 years into it, and you had a whole season off now, unfortunately, but ready to get back.
Yes, hopefully soon.
Very exciting. Very exciting. So thank you, everyone, and let's move on. So, as the law book says, it used to be 6.4a, it's now 6.5a. The referee is the sole judge of fact and of law during a match. And I think, when we first start refereeing, and it takes quite a while to sort of get beyond this, is that this is how we go out there. We go out there, we might not be 100% prepared, or we think that we are 100% prepared, and we go out there and we just want to feel that we're going to be decisive, we're going to make great decisions. And, initially you go out there and you just like, what I say goes, but if you read that law just a little bit further, it says the referee must apply the laws of the game fairly in every match. And I think this is the part that really takes you to a next level of looking at the game and becoming a referee. It really comes down to just creating a environment where, if you talk about punitive, which is penalties and free kicks, and preventative, which is management, if you can take those two parts and balance them sort of in an equitable way for both teams, then both teams feel like they get a fair shot. And at the end of the day, the focus is shifted away from you onto the players and onto the teams, so they can decide who wins the game. And I think as we'll go through the four webinars, we'll talk more and more about how your game understanding and how you approach every part of the game will actually help you to be able to apply the laws of the game fairly in every match, or create the perception that you apply the laws of the game fairly. So what you really become as a referee is a facilitator. You go out there, you set standards, you know, players understand what's expected of them, you know, what you're going to allow, what you're not going to allow. So it's really like a conductor, you know, and you'll see when we'll talk about this more, especially when we get to the fourth installment, is that, you know, you have that opportunity where you create the environment and the players are playing, and then, you know, if it gets out of control, you pull it back a little bit, you tighten it up a little bit, and then, you know, once you've tightened it up and it's under control again, you open it up again and let it play. So you're like a conductor, like a facilitator. If you can see yourself in that way, it's something that it's always in the back of your mind, you know, but when you have to take action and when you can give it a little bit more room. So all of this starts in a very simple place. And fortunately, in Texas, I know for a fact that everybody has super fantastic kit. So every single referee in Texas, you got great kit. And every time you're involved in rugby or you arriving at a game, that you just look like a superstar. And I think it's really, really important that you have such a strong society that provides you this opportunity that, you know, you don't have to arrive in a Hawaiian shirt and Bermuda shorts and flip-flops at a game, right? You can go there in your tracksuit or you can go there in your kit, and immediately when you arrive at the field, people go, that's the referee. That's the referee, you know? Because, and one of the questions I asked is like, you know, you're talking about perceptions. So how we see ourselves is not necessarily how other people see us. But now, and you know, I'll reach out to you, and like, let's take Joey for instance. So Joey, when you arrive at the field and you go and meet the teams, the coaches, how do you think they perceive you, or how do you want them to perceive you?
I want to make sure I'm in kit. I want to make sure I don't have, you know, my undershirt sticking through my fly. I want to make sure I'm done up well and looking professional, and that I've got my kit bag all squared away. And that, I mean, the moment you get out of the car and walk to the pitch, you know, if teams are getting laced up or beginning practice, they'll see you coming over by yourself. So looking presentable, looking professional, and then, you know, get ready to have a, hey, how you doing conversation with the coach, and, you know, be friendly, but again, maintain some professionalism and be cognizant of being overly friendly when you're talking to teams or captains, because the other team and management are watching you as well. So it's a balancing act a little bit, but yeah,
absolutely. So Kat, are you on here?
Yes, my
so
the oven.
So we have this perception of ourselves, and, you know, Joey did a good job of just saying, like, you know, this is how you want the coaches to see him. And what we know from Joey is that's the way that he does present himself. But I want just, Kat, if you can just talk about a different example. So you go out to New York, it's -7 million degrees. It's the first time you're doing an ARP game. You've got All Blue New York against Nyack. So so you've got the two New York teams who they love each other. They love playing each other. And here you are arriving, you're freezing, cold, the teams hate each other. And can you just talk a little bit about your experience about arriving there? Because, you know, when you arrive at a game, it's all fine and well if you're comfortable in that environment, but suddenly here you are refereeing people that you've never seen before in your life, and they're wondering why you're here. So do you want to talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that experience, I've had it a couple of times, like a similar, usually a really high level men's games, the Nyack Old Blue, obviously. I walk up and I feel like I know their perception of me is like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. We have this girl reffing our game, and they're like, oh, this is a joke. So that's how I anticipate what they're thinking. So I just go in and I'm like, yeah, hey, I'm your referee today. And I just confidently act like I don't care what they're thinking. Because in my mind, I'm going to prove it to them in the first 10 minutes that I deserve to be on that field, managing that game. But it's definitely like hard because I know, I mean, I assume that's what they're thinking when they see me. So it's everything in my power I can do to be like, no, I do belong here. I don't need you to think that because I know I do. And 10 minutes into this game, you're going to know it as well.
Absolutely. And you also know that the people that appointed you to the game appointed you because they believe in you. You know.
I keep thinking that.
Thanks, Kat. So what we're really talking about there is self-belief. You know, if no one else is going to believe in you, you have to believe in yourself at some point, because even though you might have management that have assigned you to this game, you have people that trust that you're good enough to do this game. You have to go out there and you have to trust yourself. You have to trust yourself and you have to be self-belief. And self-belief is not necessarily being arrogant about it, but it's definitely being confident, which is a different way of approaching it. And the way you get there, to be able to exude the self-belief and confidence, is to always have a growth mindset. And we talked about it earlier when the presentation started. We talked about we're always learning in rugby. And it's amazing that even after decades of being involved in the game, that I can still watch a game and learn something for it, or I can talk to someone and learn something all the time. And, you know, growth mindset is about embracing challenges. It's about learning from others, being able to accept feedback. And you have to understand that in the referee environment, you're always going to come across some people that might be a little bit abrasive in their feedback to you, but always just take whatever feedback they give you. Even if it's, you know, it might feel a bit negative at some point, if you go back and then you try and break it all down, and especially now when we have opportunity where everything is in an online platform, where, you know, everyone who says something about your game has a responsibility to be part of your development, you know. So I think gone are the days where someone's going to go, you're terrible, because what you'll find is in rugby, it's very easy to say the referee's terrible. You know, I could do that all day in every single game if I wanted to. It just depends on where your mindset is, right? So take feedback with a bag of salt always, but feedback, you can always turn it into a positive of how it's going to help you improve. The other part of growth mindset is you put effort in. You see effort as mastery. You don't just go like, oh, you know, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go for a run today. I don't want to be fit. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do the extra work. I don't want to watch the game and improve my game knowledge and game understanding. You know, every time you watch a game on TV, you can be doing work. But we'll talk about that in some of the other modules. But and then one of the key things in referees, because we're almost like athletes that are on our own to a great extent, and we're out there looking out for ourselves. If other people's success can inspire you, it goes a long way as you go through your career, that you can go, this is great. Look what this person's doing. And that's really fantastic. I'm going to take a little bit from this person, a little bit from that person. You're not out there to copy anybody or to be the same as somebody else, you know, because you can go like, you know, I'm going to mold myself completely the same as one other referee. And a good example is Nigel Owens. There can't be another Nigel Owens, you know. You can't go out there and think you're going to come up with all these lines and everyone's going to think it's funny, you know. You have to referee first. So it's a long process, but take a little bit from everybody and put it into a positive package as you move forward. A great friend of mine who works with the Pro 14 referees or Pro 16 or Pro 20, I don't know what they're called at the moment, but he said that relationships are built or broken one conversation at a time. So just think of yourself as the referee in every situation that you're in, whether you're talking to other referees, whether you're talking to team coaches or players on the field before the match. Every opportunity think of every conversation we have, we are either adding value to it or taking value away from a relationship. So just think about that, that you always have that positive attitude. And I was watching a TV show, it's on Apple TV, called Ted Lasso, which is an American amateur football coach who gets hired to be the team manager of a premiership football team, soccer team in England. And his whole approach is this, that relationships are built, broken one conversation at a time. Every conversation you have, you're either adding value or taking value away. And his whole approach is to add value in every single conversation. So it's really interesting. You know, when you watch the show, it's so uplifting that you actually want to go out and just be nice. And I think especially in the landscape now, it's very easy not to be so nice at the moment. So just always think about adding value to conversations. And the second thing I would like you to think about here is, and Dana Teagarden, who was a USA referee, she was the first woman referee who was on the national panel, and she went up to referee the World Cup. She ended up doing the fourth place game at the World Cup, the Women's World Cup, and she's now living in Germany, and she's a siding commissioner in the English Premiership. And this is such a simple statement: align actions and aspirations. If you want to be a top referee, make sure that you align all your actions to be a top referee. Make sure that you fit. Make sure you put all the work in, and that you're always learning. It's really simple. If you want to go somewhere, align your actions with your aspirations. So this is the fun part. You know, we just talked about Nigel Owens, you know, about all the different aspects of a referee. And it's really the key attributes of a referee. And we're going to look at how you can take these key attributes and shift them around to make up a complete referee. So the first one is being assertive. Assertive means that you're decisive. And you've seen the referee, like this, many top referees, you'll see that they're very decisive when they make a decision. Even if you get it wrong, you know, you get it wrong with conviction. So, and if you're on the field and you make a decision that you feel you're like, oh, I can't believe I just made that decision, that's wrong, you still got to sell it, you know. And when you become a more senior referee and you realize you did something wrong, it's okay to go like, oh, yeah, I don't think I got that one right. But be decisive. So if you're going to get it wrong, just get it wrong with conviction, especially early on in your career, and then just move on from it. Try and get it out of your head. The second part is being analytical. And analytical means to be prepared. So especially in this environment where we have a lot of games on video, that you can actually look at the teams and be prepared for the game. If you don't have video, you can still be prepared because you can ask, you can call your peers that might have refereed those teams the week before and just say like, hey, you know, is there anything that I need to look out for, you know? And they could say, well, they have a really strong scrum, or they have this crazy move at the line out. Anything, you know, that they can help you with. You know, they keep pushing the offside line, so make sure you keep the space, something. It just helps you to be prepared. And the third one is accommodating, which means building relationships. So it's really about building relationships. It's about empathy. It's about understanding what others are going through on the field. You know, whether it's players, or if you become a high level referee and you have assistant referees on, having empathy for everybody around you. You understand what the AR is going through. So when you go and speak to them, or the touch judge, you know, you might not be domineering or rude to them. Every moment you get, you're building those relationships, right? But all of these, assertive, analytical, and accommodating, they all have a negative part to them. So if you're very decisive, and that's the only thing you do, you might be unempathetic, right? So you just start being rude to players. And, you know, you start shouting and there's no relationship building. So if you're unempathetic, you come back to being accommodating, and relationship is a part that balances it. The negative part of being analytical is that you're too detached, because you're so prepared. You're going to go, I'm going to go make these decisions. I've already decided, bang, bang, bang. You go out there. Like we talk to some referees, you go like, why are we standing on that side of the scrum? He's like, oh, because I'm looking at this prop. This prop is bad. I'm going to penalize him. So you're sort of over prepared, but you're detached from the game, because if something happens and that prop doesn't do anything, and you penalize them, you already lose credibility. So, you know, there is definitely opportunity to be detached, and how you can be better prepared from being detached is to be assertive and decisive, to make those decisions, right? And then the last part of accommodating, if you're too accommodating and you just want to be friends with everybody, you want everybody to love you and be nice to you, you know, you could come across as being insecure. You know, so the way that you overcome being insecure is to be better prepared. So you are prepared to what's coming at you. Right, let's get into the pre-match. So who wants to talk to us a little bit about what they think the pre-match is all about? Anyone out there? When we talk about your pre-match. Yep.
Are you talking about like your pre-match, like our personal one?
Not yet.
Okay.
Just the purpose of the pre-match. Anyone?
To set expectations and build rapport.
Absolutely. That's really simple. Who's that?
Hey, Greg.
Great. Yes, that's exactly what it is. To set expectations and build rapport. Is anybody that thinks the pre-match is about anything different?
Hey, this is Philip Cupins.
Hey, Philip, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. How you been?
Excellent, excellent.
As most of you guys know, I'm currently in a director of rugby role, not currently refereeing. But from a coach's perspective, I've always felt that the pre-match is also about, from the captains and the coaches' perspective, it's also an opportunity for the referee to establish credibility. And I've told referees that be very careful about, some captains will test your knowledge, right? They'll ask what seems like a stupid question. We always joke about, when's the ball out and stuff like that. But a lot of those captains are also trying to see, how is this referee going to call this match? Is it going to be letter of the law? Is it going to be about materiality and things like that? And I think that's sometimes lost is how the audience is receiving the communication rather than the intent of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Philip. I mean, I think that's great. And I think, just think about it when you go to the pre-match, you can see the images on the screen. When you want to walk away, I mean, you're not joking, but you want them to be happy and confident. You don't want the group at the bottom where they think it's going to be the longest day out there and they wonder if they couldn't find something better to do on the Saturday, right? So your pre-match, it's about introducing yourself to everybody, especially the players that you're going to be talking to make a good impression, and that they can walk away from this where they trust you. So just think about that. Always when you go in there, introduction, good impression, and they can trust you. One of the things that's never going to happen is you're not going to change their game plan, and you're not going to change the way that they play the game. So the only opportunity that you're taking here is to introduce yourself, good impression, and trust. So now let's move on to the actual pre-match. So does anybody want to share with us their pre-match? Does anybody have it? I know some of you might have notes that you write down that you use, but is there anyone that just off the top of the head has got like, yeah, this is my pre-match?
Well, I have one that it's been a while, so I'll see if I can remember. I identify who the hooker is. I say I'll make a mark, step to the left of the mark. Who are my props? Identify who my props are. I want to reward the dominant scrum. So if you keep your binds up, you all drive straight together, and you show me a good picture, I can reward you. And then that's usually it. I usually tell the 9 that I take the tunnel at the first scrum, and then I'll step aside when they can put the ball in. But that's about it. Oh, safety call. I would say if you're feeling unsafe, unsteady, say no, 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 stop, stop, stop. I'll blow the whistle, and then you can stand up.
Yeah.
That's it.
Great. Anyone else?
Hi, good evening. This is Ozzy.
Hi, Ozzy.
Hi, I start off the discussion, of course, with the captains, and then, in the front rows and the scrum, but anyone is invited, of course, if they like to listen. And we'll talk about the scrum very briefly. And I do tell them I'm looking for the proper binds and straight shoulders. And then after that, it's short and simple, kind of even more short than what Kat just said. But then I've noticed, this is local rugby, that they tend to have trouble with keeping a gap in the lineouts, and I take that as a convenient moment to speak to the people who are usually setting that gap. It's usually a prop in the first position, and so I'll request, hey, can you help me make sure we're keeping the full meter gap during the lineouts? And I'll even try to get some buy-in. I'll say that way, the throwers from both teams have a better chance of having a straight throw. And then we have fewer scrum resets and everyone's happier and we can play more rugby. And that almost always works. And it's amazing how much cleaner the lineouts can be.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, if that works for you, that's excellent. Absolutely. Anyone else? Thanks, Ozzy.
This is Brendan. I always kind of throughout the pre-match, I'll try to at least ask the coach or captain if there's anything that they've been working on in the week that they specifically want me to watch for. So whether that's a specific line out play that may be tricky within the law, or if they're going to try the not contest line out or whatever it is, or if they're going to be really hard pressing the 10, and so maybe they look to be offside more, just random things that they may be working on in the week, and I feel like it always lets them know that I'm thinking about them also, and that it's not just like my game, and that nothing can change. It's like I'll take input from them, and if I understand that they've been working hard through the week, just as I have, and that their opinion matters. So I always feel like that helps.
Absolutely. And I think, that's a great opportunity when you arrive at the field and you go and introduce yourself to the coach to just create a little bit of rapport. I think that's definitely a great idea. That's a great idea.
Hey, Brendan. Sorry, Richard. Hey,
Yes.
Brendan, do you still tell players that?
Nope, don't even, nope, just stop. Nope, I know where you're going. We don't even have to.
Anyone talk to you?
Yeah, that's one mistake I made with the Reds, and Philip knows I will never make that mistake again.
Okay, I don't think I'm going to ask what that is, but I will move on. Keep it simple. Obviously, there was a lot of good information that everybody shared. I think one of the things that I always found useful to myself, now remember that everybody is different. What you want to do, as was mentioned earlier, is that you want to keep it short. You want to keep it short. You want to keep it simple. It's not going to be an opportunity for you to tell the teams that you're going to referee the game completely differently, and that they're going to be very sad about going out there because now the referee said you can't do this and you can't do that. Right? So just think about every time they ask you a question, take a moment, take a deep breath, and then answer them. Right? So don't be arrogant. Just think about it and be nice. So one example is that you get the front row. You normally would want to try and get all the front row players, so even the substitutes, and maybe the scrum off and the fly off. If you don't want to do all of those players, that's great. But this is just an opportunity. So you go scrum engagement procedure, one call, one action. Make sure that you bind throughout the scrum, body straight, and you drive straight. The second thing is talk to scrum halves, tell them where they would stand, put the ball in, and then make sure the scrum halves understand where the offside line is. One scrum half is their side, that's got to be, the defense has got to be their side of the ball, scrum of putting it in has got to be on the ball. So it's just something to help them. And then you go, if there's a free kick or penalty at a scrum, they're going to take a quick tap. It's got to be on the mark or behind it. And one thing that I found was very useful is that you can also say to the scrum halves is that if there's a penalty or free kick and you want to take a quick tap, you have to take it from the mark. So this is not just scrums. Anytime you have to take it from the mark. And normally, sometimes you're not going to have an opportunity to make the mark. So if they ask you where the mark is, you can point to where it is and they can take it, right? But tell them not to come running to you to take the tap where you are, because on most occasions, you're not on the mark. And what this does, it prevents them from taking quick taps, prevents them from running at you and taking quick taps all the time, because they've got to know where the mark is. And they go back there and they take a kick from there. It's the same like if you ward another 10 meters, they can't take it until you make the mark. And then the fly-offs, the reason why I like the fly-offs to come in is just to say to the fly-off, hey, at the scrum, you keep 5 meters, the line out, I'll have my arm up when it's 10 meters, you know, and my arm comes down, you can come up. Only because I want to meet the fly-off. Because as I've found in my life of refereeing is that fly-offs are the nicest people on the field and you want to meet them, right? So you want to make sure that you have an opportunity just to go, I'm the ref, you're the fly-off, right? It's a good opportunity.
Spoken like a true fly half.
Oh yeah, I did play fly-off. Anyway, to be nice, let's move on to the coin toss. So normally, the one thing, you know, was mentioned earlier about talking to the coaches is building a bit of rapport. When you go and meet the coaches, you ask them like, hey, when would you like us to do the pre-match? And they'll come back to you and say to you, before we warm up, because you're going to be there early enough that you can do it before they warm up, right? Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to interrupt their warm up and you don't want to do it just before you kick off. So you want to be there early enough so you can meet the coaches, so you can go like, okay, they're going to warm up 45 minutes before, you can go and have a quick chat to them and do a kit check if you do that, and do that for both teams. And once you've done both teams, you want to accommodate the coaches, but you also don't want to be in a situation that's just awkward for everybody. So you want to do it early. Once you've done the coin toss, once you've done the pre-match, you go and do the coin toss. So you get to the coin toss and see there is your wonderful part of your kit is the Texas referee coins, right? So does anybody want to talk a little bit about the coin toss, about what they do when they coin toss? So you've done the pre-match and now you got the two captains together, the three of you. What are you going to discuss?
Step one, remember the coin. Don't do rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, it's always a good idea to do a complete full kit check twice before you leave home. Absolutely. Nobody wants to referee without socks. Nobody wants to referee without cards. Nobody wants to be without a coin. At least with a coin, you can go ask around if someone has a coin. But anybody want to share their coin toss stories about how they?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Yep, go for it.
Richard, this is Derek.
Hey, Derek.
How are you? Yeah.
Excellent. Yourself?
Good. Yeah, so coin toss, outside of the actual toss itself, it's an opportunity where you get both captains together, really. And, you can just have a quick little, just a conversation with them or a word about, hey, if things get out of line, I need your help. Let's just make sure we're working together. And then that's really it. It's a unique opportunity where you get both captains together. And so I think it's just a little quick moment to just remind them like, hey boys, it's the three of us in this. And then, so.
Absolutely.
Outside of the coin toss, don't ever flip the coin yourself. Have them flip it, because just let them screw it up if they screw it up. So yeah, home team tosses, away team calls. Yeah, good to go.
Excellent. So I think Derek saw the slide before. So
and then you get the what's the kickoff, and then they want to receive kind of deal. And then we have that conversation. So
yeah. We want to kick off from this side. So as Derek said, it's an opportunity to establish rapport with both captains. It's good to clarify the team colors. So you can say, we are going to call you red today, and we're going to call you gray, so that they understand. That's for those situations where you're not calling the teams by their team names. It's easier to call it by color. It's much simpler. It's an opportunity for open line of communication. And so what you can say to the captains is, when I make a decision, I give a primary, I give a secondary, and I communicate verbally. So you can say to the captain, if you're too far away, you can just look at my signals, right? If there's going to be a penalty or free kick, we're not really going to have a discussion, right? So questions and comments can be at stoppages, not at penalty kicks or free kicks. Just because you don't want that captain to keep running to you every time there's a penalty and talking to you and talking to you and talking to you, right? You just want to get on with the game, especially if the number 9 knows where the mark is now and they're going to take that quick tap. So, as Derek said, the home captain, give him the coin, give her the coin. He or she can spin it, the away captain calls. And that's always the case. Home captain spins, away captain calls. And the coin toss winner decides if they want to kick off or what side they want to play, right? So if they choose a kick, the opposition chooses a side. If they choose a side, the opposition kicks. So often you get captains that go, as Derek said, I want to kick off from this side. So just make sure you got all that sorted out.
It's been a while. I almost forgot.
I always have them say we want to receive, and I have to tell them the same thing, like, no, that's not an option. You got to pick a side if you want to do that. So yeah, that's always pretty common.
I just usually say when they want to receive, okay, so you want to defend, which side? I make them choose a side.
Yeah.
Some of them like to defer, though. This is Texas.
Yeah, they tried to defer, and
that's
I get really pedantic with them and go into the no, that's not an option. You've got a 1 or 2, and so it's a pet peeve.
And if they say, can they decide a little bit later, you go like, okay, 10 minutes before the game kicks off, you come tell me what you're going to do. So just always give them specific times, One of the other things I just wanted to go back to the pre-match about keeping it simple, and when captains ask you, they might even ask you at the coin toss, when is the ball out? And as Philip mentioned, a lot of times they're just sort of challenging you to see what you know, what you don't know. And you can say, when there's a body over the ball's not out. When the scrum off's digging for the ball, it's not out. When they lift the ball off the ground, it's out. If they roll the ball back with their hands, it's out. If they roll it back with their feet, it's not out. But what I find, which is always a great thing, is to say, when in doubt, the ball is not out. Just assume it's not out. And when you say that to players, they go, okay, right, that's fine, right? Because you don't want to be debating with them and having arguments with them.
Hey, Richard.
Yes.
Pat, I usually say, if you ever have a question, you can ask me and I'll give you an immediate response. Like, it's all yes or no. And I rarely ever get asked, but everyone seems like super happy that I'm willing to tell them.
Yeah.
But they never ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the one thing you don't want to do, you don't get to that situation where you go, yes, the ball's out, and then someone gets destroyed, right? So you don't want to be coaching a team. So I think Cat's point is something that everyone should take on board. That's great. So I hope this is not going to be too loud, but we're going to blow it up a little bit and talk about whistling, whistle tone. So these are generally the 3 whistles that people use. They're all Acme Thunderers. Some of them are a little wider, broader, and some of them are different, but longer, the one in the center. So the one in the center is generally used by people in the Northern Hemisphere, definitely in Europe. And the plastic, what's it? It's Simonite, is it? It's Simonite. So I think is the name of material that it's made from is generally used in the Southern Hemisphere. I just found that the black whistle was always much nicer to you on your teeth over long term, you know. So you never got so upset that you were blowing the whistle and it actually chipped your tooth or something like that. So at that point, I'm just going to get out of this screen, and I'm going to share my camera so I can show you about some whistle blowing. So that should be fun. We just changed the mic here because when I tested it earlier, it was definitely okay. That should be good. Excellent. So let me just move this camera up here so I can give you a little bit of a better view of what's going on up here. You look very happy and excited about this, Ozzy. You're laughing at something else. Yeah. Can everyone still hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, I got you.
We've all got our headphones half out of our ears, afraid of where this is going.
Yeah, I'm just waiting on it.
It's not going to be that loud. So I think I tested it before and it sounded beautiful, right? It was fantastic. Maybe not. Anyway, so one of the things that I just want to talk about, because I see a lot of referees, like, you know, when you're going out there and you're refereeing a game, what you really want to do is you want to just think about if nobody's watching the game and somebody's just walking by and they hear the whistle, they go like, oh, it sounds like a referee. It sounds like a person knows what they're doing. When your signals and everything, they just go like, ah, that's the ref. They look like $1 million, right? And then obviously there's no real lesson of how to blow your whistle. And I think a lot of people just blow. So it's just like you'd normally blow. And when you hear it, and I hope it's not going to be too loud because it's going to be a bad one, this one. So it's just like, you know, you hear that like the sort of pea rumbling in there and you're like, you know, how does it sound like that? But apparently nobody teaches you how to blow the whistle properly. So what we're going to do is, if we can just lower the camera a bit, is that what you really want to do is you want to hold your core. So you hold your core tight and then you've got air in your mouth still. So when you hold your core tight and you just blow through your mouth, you know, immediately you've got all this pressure that you're blowing. So now you're not just rolling out, coming from your lungs all the way out. It's just in your mouth and it's just pressure and you're just blowing it here. So if you're going to blow a scrum, it's just, you know, so suddenly you've got all this power in here, you know, and it's the same thing for a penalty, which is a little bit longer. You can feel that there's a lot more pressure, but what you're doing is you're not blowing. So just think about always keeping your core tight and you got the pressure in your mouth, and that's how you blow your whistle. It's very, very simple. And, you know, if you have problems with it, because if you're just going to blow like that, then it really comes across as being sort of very, very, it's not very authoritative, right? So the players don't react to it. They're just like, oh, what happened there? You know, did something go on, you know? Was that a cricket or something? No, it was the referee blowing the whistle. So they want to make sure that when you blow your whistle, that it's always going to be loud and it's going to be completely in your face, right? So what we're going to talk about next is talk about body language and sort of signaling. So just think about, you've got this super fantastic kit as a referee, right? So you got great kit. You're always going to look fantastic because you're from Texas. And first of all, just about body language, just always think about how you present yourself. Are you always standing up straight? You got your shoulders back. You know, you're not sort of like slumped over and looking down. Of course, we have to look down because we have to make marks and things like that. But just think about always standing up straight. And especially when you start refereeing early on, to stand up straight and have your arms beside your body is not always that easy, right? Because it's like you sort of feel like maybe like you're a soldier or something, and you're like, oh no, I feel uncomfortable. I'm just trying to look cool, you know. So don't think about that. Just think about just standing up straight, shoulders back. Good posture, always, you know. And then the other thing is, especially when you're communicating with players, always think about making eye contact. So always looking at people when you speak to them, so that you have that extra level of communication. You know, eventually when you become a more senior referee, you can just look at somebody and they sort of get an idea of how you feel about the situation, you know. The other thing that's a really great idea is that there's a lot of really large players out there. So just think about, if you're communicating with players, that you don't get too close to them, especially if they're very large players, right? Because you don't want to be standing there looking up at someone and talking to them. So just think about, when you're further back, you can be more at eye level when you're speaking to them. So just think about like sort of how you have that personal space. You know, I think everyone's getting a lot of practice with social distancing, so you should be pretty good at it. But just think about keeping that space when you're talking to somebody. Signaling. It's always been sort of a bugbear for me. You know, there's no reason for us to be bad at signaling. And I think in the beginning, it's very difficult to feel like, you know, because you feel like you're a bit of a sort of a soldier out there, you know. So just think about, I'm sure all of you have mirrors at home, and that you can go and stand in front of the mirror. You put your kit on, tuck your shirt in. You can even put your socks on if you have to. Stand in front of the mirror and just see what you look like, you know, so that when you go and award a penalty, that you actually award the penalty properly, you know. It's sort of at that sort of 60 degrees here, got about 30 degrees here, 60 degrees there, so it's sort of up there, that you're not going like penalties here and the scrums here and people get confused about what you're doing, right? So just think about, if you're going to award a scrum, your arm is out straight, penalty, arms up here. Everyone knows exactly what the difference is between them. And then also what you do is you go and build on your secondary signals, right? So you go secondary signals. So now you go, it's a scrum, make sure your signals are good. You go, it's a knock on, you know, so just practice it. I mean, you don't want to be doing this, because if I'm doing this, no one behind me can see what I'm doing, right? So just think about big signals. It's almost like, I remember somebody said to me, like you're painting it on a large canvas. You know, that's how you're presenting yourself and presenting your signals. And it might feel uncomfortable at times, because you just might not be confident enough to be showing the signals properly. But go, you know, it's your scrum, ball taken into the maul, you know, it's a penalty, high tackle. If you practice and practice it, you can get them better and better, you know. And if you don't have a gigantic mirror to look at, just film yourself, you know, or look at your games and see what your signaling's like. You know, it's the same thing. Like a lot of people can't do a free kick signal, because you go like, oh, it's a free kick. It's like, oh, you can't get that arm up. Oh, maybe it should be about up here. And when the first time you get it right, you go like, oh, what's happening to my shoulder, right? Because you can see that your shoulder's actually in line with your body. But I mean, you find so many people can't do it, you know. And I know my hand's probably a bit squiff here, but I mean, if you do a fist, it looks a little bit aggressive, right? So it's normally nice to have a beautiful flat hand open there like that, right? But just think about these signals. I mean, these are the things you want to get right. And because I'm a little bit older now, my shoulder's saying like, how long are we going to be awarding this free kick for? But, you know, fortunately, when you're refereeing, you don't have to do it too long, you know. So just make sure you get it right. Practice and get all your signals. Get your signals in the place where people go, when they see you, they just go like, wow. Not only is that referee wearing a super fantastic kit, but everything they do looks great. The whistle tone is amazing, the signal's amazing, and the decision making will eventually get there, right? Does anybody have any questions about signaling before I go back to the presentation? No? Everybody good?
Yeah,
I could ask a question.
Sure.
Might be the only time I ever asked this question.
When's the ball out?
No. You know, we have the signals that are in the back of the law book, but then there's about a half dozen signals that refs have made up over the years, like you know, collapsing a scrum, et cetera, et cetera. This, you know, I kind of just watch rugby and guess my way through those. Do you have any suggestions for the signals that are not uniform across rugby? Is there a source or something that we should study? Or
I think that most of them are in there, and you'll find that a lot of referees just make up stuff, you know. So that whole thing with the player on the ground and crawling, I think Jakob Paper came up with it, where he went like this, you know. And you'll find that sort of Andre Watson came up with a lot of signals himself. You know, he came up with it with the water try on your knee, you know, sometimes. So I think that as a group in Texas, that your management group with Timmy and Kat are the ones that can say like, well, maybe this is the way we're going to do it, you know. I know that we've never really approached it in the way and say like, oh, you can't do this signal, you can't do that signal. But what we always want to do is want to make sure that however you communicate, that everybody understands it, right? So, I mean, I don't know if any of you know the game of cricket, but in cricket, when somebody's been dismissed, when somebody's out, like in baseball, when someone is out, the umpire would do this, and then suddenly you have Wayne Barnes going first player in, you know, in England where everyone plays cricket and they all think that they've been dismissed, you know. So it's just it just really depends. It's like we're going to go in and talk about communication as well, about, you know, the words that you use. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But all of that together is the complete package. You know, it's how you're going to communicate to them. What is the best way of communicating to them? So you don't have to necessarily come up with all these crazy signals, but you'll find that some of the top referees, because on TV always, that, you know, when they do something and they do something new, it eventually becomes part of into the law book, right? So I mean, I can't even recall exactly when they went like, oh, it's a penalty rolling away, you know. I don't even remember when that signal came in, but I know that when I started refereeing, it definitely wasn't in there, you know. So, because back in those days, we used to allow them to stand on players that didn't roll away. So, you know, it was a little bit of a different game, you know. But I mean, now you have to roll away. So now the signal comes in. You know, it's the same with the tackler assist signal. Is also not that old, you know. So signals change all the time, but I think that, you know, if you have any questions, you know, just obviously discuss it as a peer group. And I think as a peer group, it's easier to make a decision together and go like, is this something we should introduce? Rather than you just going off on a tangent somewhere, you know. But I feel like it's not necessarily the end of the world if you use if you copying someone that comes up with some new signal. It's just really important that the message that you're trying to communicate is the right message. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any other questions on that? We're almost done here because I know we started like a little couple of minutes late, and we just want to make sure that we can finish this off. So let me just get back to stopping my screen, sharing my screen. Back here we go. So that was a whistle. Hopefully that was, everyone will blow the whistle like champions moving forward. As you can see, if you go to the World Rugby website, you can see that all the signals are in there, and they very well done by all the referees. They show you all the signals. You can look at all of them, and you can make sure that you can get them as good as possible. Practice in the mirror and make sure you get them right. The last thing we want to talk about is communication. Communication is really, really an important part of the refereeing. So just think about your whistle as part of communication, your body language, your signaling is all part of it, you know. But the words that you use are so, so, so important. And one of the first things you might learn as a referee, we hope, is silence is essential. And it is so powerful not talking. So if you keep talking and you keep having to explain yourself all the time, you know, eventually it can just become white noise. So every line out you're talking, every scrum you're talking, every breakdown you're talking, just think of it, it just becomes white noise. But to just be quiet, especially early on in the game, and you go, the tackler hasn't rolled away, and you penalize them, and you have great whistle tone, great signal, and great secondary signal, and all the players can see what you're doing. It's amazing. You know, you don't have to tell them 10 times they didn't roll away. You just go 7 black, not rolling away, you know, and just work on it from that perspective. Just always thinking that less is more. Sorry, did someone have a question there?
Well, Richard, this is Aaron Jameson.
Hi, Aaron.
North. I love what you're saying, and I find that the better the players, the higher the level of the competition, the more that makes sense. And the inverse is also true. I've committed myself to really assist with the high school and youth teams because, to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I got involved in refereeing, was because my son was a high school player and we didn't have good refs.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really unfortunate to watch the dad from the other kids from the other team referee all the matches.
Yeah.
So that being said, I find that communication, particularly with the high school boys and girls, is critical to help them understand what's actually happening, just because they're just not nearly as experienced or knowledgeable about playing and participating.
Excellent. So I have a question. I have a challenge for you, that in your next game, obviously in all rugby that you referee, your main goal is safety. Safety is always the goal. However, if you go out there and take this approach where silence, where you're not necessarily talking, and you're very clear about setting your standards early and blowing the penalties and communicating what it's for, I believe that you have an opportunity where you would still get a greater result out of the game. You'd be able to lift the players' level of play, because they'll have a very clear understanding what it is, and they don't have to concentrate that much necessarily on you talking to them. But of course, if you add a scrum, definitely you'll be talking more. If you add a line out, you'll be talking more. But just think about, as the game is going on, just think about, if you take that same approach, you still have an opportunity where you can create that same environment. And it's different for everybody. Some people are really good. I found for myself that I always approach every single game the same. So it doesn't matter if it was professional players or if it was, under 16 game of players that only started playing. I always approach it the same way, that I communicate the same way with everyone, and just go, this is the decision, this is the law. Obviously when you have downtime and you can say something else to them, you can, but you also have to understand that when you're communicating in these situations, you might be talking to someone who doesn't really know the game, So, but, if you're successful in it, then keep doing it. You definitely have to talk more, especially when it comes to safety. Last thing is use your words, which I think it comes out of kindergarten, but just think about what words you use. And, are you going to say to players, arrive up at the breakdown, or are you going to tell them to stay on their feet? Which one do you think will be easier for them to understand? Possibly stay on your feet, right? So just think about, you'll say things on the field, and it's great when you have a recording. A lot of referees start out using a little voice recorder, and you can go and listen to yourself afterwards. And if you can't understand what you're saying to someone, then maybe you change your words. And it's really amazing that when you keep working on that, you're building your toolbox. Because if you look at the top referees, you might think a lot of things they say is off the cuff, but I can assure you it's not. All those sentences have been pre-planned. They understand what they're going to say. They understand what they're trying to communicate, and they understand how people respond to them. So just think about always just learning and changing the words and changing your style of communication, so it best suits you as a referee to be able to communicate your message. Anybody have anything to add to communication? Nope. Right, so let's just finish off. Just quickly look at the summary. Apply the laws fairly. You're a facilitator. And how you present yourself is really, really essential. Self-belief, growth mindset is key into building relationships, and make sure that your actions and aspirations are aligned. Talked about decisive preparation in relationships. Make sure that your pre-match is great. Whistle, signals, and communication. There's no reason why they should not be excellent all the time, because you could learn to blow your whistle. Your signals can be perfect. And your communication is something that you'll be working on for the rest of your refereeing career. Any last questions before we close? We're all good? Excellent. So remember, in 2 weeks' time, I'll be broadcasting from Bermuda, but we're looking at structure. So we'll be talking about scrums and lineouts, etc. So we will see you then. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Yep,
Richard.
absolutely.
Thanks.
Bye now.